Today I want to talk about my journey deep into the interwebs and YouTube and all that, and kind of where I started to notice like little things about human behavior and how we act and things like that. And if you see in the title, there's a particular YouTuber's name there. This is not really about him. It kind of is, but only because he was my kind of gateway into YouTube and things like Facebook is where I start to really notice these things about human behavior. And so it was like the early 2010s, and I grew up watching TV. The TV was always on in the background, whether I was watching it or not. And it's when I kind of discovered YouTube. And I was always into music creation when I was a kid. You know, I had like two turntables and a mixer, and I used to make mixtapes and stuff like in high school. And then I learned about beat making and all the different things people were using. They had home studios and everything. So I started watching these beat making videos. And then, so that's how I started watching YouTube and started watching it more and more. Then I found other people, but I never really watched specific content creators. Like I didn't even know content creation was a thing. And then I saw this guy, Tommy Sotomayor, and he had this really controversial kind of channel. He talked a lot about a lot of black issues, talked a lot about black women, not very positive things, and just our communities in general. And this guy had this amazing setup in the early 2010s, and looked professional, like he was born to do this. And the guy was like, very talented. He had a great setup, very quick-witted, great comedic timing. He had other talents like he could sing, and then he would take phone calls and do lives, things I had never seen before. And I just got drawn in. And also he talked about a lot of things that in our communities that weren't being addressed. So after a while, I started watching more and more, and I was getting away from watching TV more and more. So I started, to watch him a lot, and I really enjoyed these videos he had. Where he would just roast people to death. He's incredible at roasting people, and some of these videos I've seen several times, and I, and then he would have a lot of lives where his fans would be in the chat. The fans were known as Soto Nation, and a lot of times, like I said, he would take phone calls with people. What So I started to notice a few things. One, like during the phone calls, a lot of times it would go left quickly and just go way left. And he would always, like the person on the phone would always sound like a complete idiot. And in the chat, we would be just clowning this guy, like, oh, this guy's an idiot. And it just kind of seemed like everyone he talked to was an idiot. Then there would be videos that he would make where he was talking about someone making a video about him and all the things that they were saying about him, and he would counter every argument they made. It just seemed like, oh, here's another idiot making a video about Tommy. But after a while, it seemed like he would just have like beef after beef. And it was always the other person kind of stalking him, and they always kind of started it in the lives when he's talking to someone on like a live call. No matter what was happening in that discussion, the chat was always going in on the other person, basically talking about how they're an idiot, just clowning a person. And sometimes I'm listening to this conversation, and I'm like, what that person is saying, does make some sense. And sometimes Tommy would be saying things that I thought were just completely irrational, like what? And there would be a lot of deflecting and a lack of accountability and things like this. And his fans would never seem to catch it or never call him out. No matter what, they were always 100% in his corner. And I kind of started to notice this. Same thing would happen with the regular videos. I look in the comment sections, and he's making video number 8082 about a new stalker, a new person that was just kind of harassing him. And in some cases, I can see that he threw the first punch. Like he would say something about this person in a video, the other person would make a video response, and they would have this back and forth. But he was somehow never the reason for this beef. And the chat would just go right along with him, calling the other person all kind of idiots, and they were stalking him and all kind of stuff like this. And I started to realize that no matter what happened, the people who liked him were always on his side, and I was one of the followers. I liked his content. I thought he's very talented. I like to watch him, but that was separate from what I observed. I like his content and what he was doing, but I would listen to what people would say, and I would agree or disagree with some of the things that people were saying and how they carry themselves. After a while, I kind of noticed, there's this series of tactics that he would use to try to make it seem like the other person was losing. And he would do things like go to the audience, say, "Audience, did I ever say this, or did you hear say this?" And he would always go to the audience, and I was just thinking to myself, like, this is a clear tactic. Obviously, this is the audience of your people, and they're going to side with you. So then they would all come in the chat, and together they would make the other person seem like they were an idiot and like that person lost. They were destroyed. And it really didn't matter what was said. So, I talk about Tommy Sotomayor. This video is not really about him. It's just about, this is where I started to notice these things because I was watching so much. And then I started to, after a while, branch off and start to watch other content creators. And I would notice things like, oh, they kind of do that thing like Tommy does. Or I noticed like their fans would do similar things that Tommy's fans were doing. I would see it in different channels, different people, different audiences. And I kind of started to realize that these were patterns of behavior and that people were more supportive of the people that they liked. And if there was someone going against their YouTuber of choice, that person was automatically wrong. That person got destroyed in a debate. That person's an idiot. And if there's a beef between the two, the other person always started it. And it's like I started to notice that our emotional connection to ideas, people, things would ultimately determine how, what our opinion was on different things that would come up. And there would be people, no matter what he said, if they didn't like him, he was an idiot, he was wrong, and all these kind of other things. He was a scammer and all these things. But generally, when someone discusses a topic and you already know that they've already had this way of looking at these past topics, you can usually gauge 99% of the time which way they're going to go with the new one. And where I'm going with this is that I noticed there's not a lot of nuanced thought when it comes to different topics. It's basically like I typically think along these lines, so that each new topic that comes along, you can predict where they're gonna go because they don't consider all the intricacies of the topic or the event. Kind of just lacks nuance a lot of times. I've noticed this, and this is going to be true for myself, for not every single person, but I mean people in general, something that I'm noticing. This is when it all started. This is when I became really, really fascinated with human behavior and human nature. And I would just launch into these conversations with like family members or coworkers. And I would just love to hear people's take on things. And then I would hear the same ways of thinking that I would see online. People will have their bias, and then on each topic, their point of view would line up with their previous ways of thinking of other topics. But anyway, yeah, I just kind of wanted to point out how this all started. Well, I was always kind of interested in human nature and behavior, but it really ramped up in the early 2010s when I started to pull away from watching TV and more into YouTube. And this particular content creator, who doesn't really have a big presence on YouTube now, was my entryway into noticing all of these things. But anyway, more videos coming up. Thanks for watching. Next time.